I was asked if we might sing a song as we begin. This is a call and response song. So I will sing a line and then you sing it back to me. It's quite simple. Since I know it's late afternoon and you've already absorbed a lot. It goes like this. Tell me whose side are you leaning on? Then you sing, leaning on the Lord's side. Tell me whose side are you leaning on? The Lord's side. I lean, I lean, I lean, I lean. Leaning on the Lord's side. I lean, I lean, I lean, I lean. Is anybody here named Eileen? Now, the idea is you're supposed to do what you're singing, okay? Sort of like on Sunday morning when you sing the joy of the Lord, it'd be good to smile once in a while. So here, if you're leaning, then you lean, okay? You got it? Tell me whose side are you leaning on? The Lord's side. Tell me whose side are you leaning on? Leaning on the Lord's side. I lean, I lean, I lean, I lean. Leaning on the Lord's side. I lean, I lean, I lean, I lean. Leaning on the Lord's side. Tell me whose side are you singing on? Tell me whose side are you singing on? Singing on the Lord's side. I sing, I sing, I sing, I sing. Singing on the Lord's side. I sing, I sing, I sing, I sing. Singing on the Lord's side. Tell me whose side are you clapping on? Tell me whose side are you clapping on? Clapping on the Lord's side. I clap, I clap, I clap, I clap. Clapping on the Lord's side. I clap, I clap, I clap, I clap. Clapping on the Lord's side. Tell me whose side are you standing on? Tell me whose side are you standing on? Standing on the Lord's side. I stand, I stand, I stand, I stand. Standing on the Lord's side. I stand, I stand, I stand, I stand. Standing on the Lord's side. Tell me whose side are you shouting on? That was pretty lame. Tell me whose side are you shouting on? I shout, I shout, I shout, I shout. Shouting on the Lord's side. I shout, I shout, I shout, I shout. Shouting on the Lord's side. Tell me whose side are you whispering on? Whispering on the Lord's side. Tell me whose side are you whispering on? Whispering on the Lord. I whisper, I whisper, I whisper, I whisper. Whispering on the Lord's side. I whisper, I whisper, I whisper, I whisper. Whispering on the Lord's side. Tell me whose side are you praying on? Tell me whose side are you praying on? Praying on the Lord's side. I pray, I pray, I pray, I pray. Praying on the Lord's side. I pray, I pray, I pray, I pray. Praying on the Lord's side. Tell me whose side are you stopping on? On the Lord's side. Tell me whose side are you stopping on? Stopping on the Lord's side. I stop, I stop, I stop, I stop. You may be seated.
How's that? Beautiful. Should I repeat everything I said, or did you hear me enough? If we can facilitate some sort of connection, that to me is one of the greatest things we can do here. I want to go back to the picture again, and this time I want to talk about the Father, the extender of grace. What does it look like for us to live like the Father? So in my mind, the idea, the goal of the Christian life is for us to become people who are able to live our lives, as Dallas would say, able to live our lives as if Jesus were to live our lives, essentially. What does it look like to be people who move beyond the prodigal, we move beyond the older brother, and we now are able to extend grace to others? One of the key things I've seen in working and helping professions is that relationships heal. I've come to believe it's the primary method that God uses to bring healing to His people. Now that's coming from a clinical social worker who, worked mental health and, spent lots of time working with people. But in the end, it's relationships. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a relationship between a pastor and person or a therapist, and relationships, period. That seems to be the primary method that I would say God brings healing to us. God extends grace to us in our relationships. The basic idea of to know and be known. There's this kind of human, at the very base level, deep within each one of us, is desire for other people to know us and for us to know other people, to know and be known. Now there's a problem there right off the bat. And if you take that seriously, knowing and being known, you know what happens. You get hurt. If I know others and I'm in a relationship with others, they will hurt me, and I'll hurt them. And one of the interesting and tragic characteristics of humans is that we tend to hurt those we love the most. It happens. Huh? The other piece is if you know me, really know me, well, you just might not like me, huh? And so many of us live hidden lives, trying desperately to escape the fear that if we're really seen for who we are, will we still be accepted? Would you really like me if you knew me deep down inside? So we have this desire to know others and to be known, yet if you know me, that's risky, that hurts. And if I know you, well, you're going to hurt me and I'm going to hurt you. So there's something dangerous right off the bat, and I think it's no coincidence that we live in a society that's very isolated and very lonely, and that's part of it. Sociologically speaking, I think this is a fair statement, that sociologically speaking, in organized human history, there has never been a society more disconnected and more isolated from each other than what we see today. So if you look throughout the history of the world, when there's organized groups, we have never seen more disconnected, more lonely, more isolated people than ever today. There's a lot of reasons for that. Probably we could start with the Industrial Revolution and division of labor. We start seeing some of these shifts. We move into America. Individualism is one of our most cherished values, if not one of our greatest idols. As a result, we have this crazy notion that strength happens to be found in isolation. That in order for me to stay strong, that's, I don't need you and you don't need me, and I can do it on my own. The gospel says something entirely different. One of the consequences of this is that I believe we are living in a relational disordered society. I think we can give lots of reasons why half marriages end in divorce, why people live with a chronic sense of loneliness and isolation. But in the end, I don't think we know how to have relationships with each other in the way that I suspect they used to in the past. I don't know, I didn't live in the past, but I assume that it was quite different in terms of relationships. A number of reasons for that. Let me share a story with you if I can. I used to work in a residential treatment center for high-risk adolescents. So these were kids coming out of the jails. And many of them have been kicked out of other treatment facilities. And it was a rough place to work. And when I went to work there, they did the training for me. And the training was a 2-week-long training that involved, we learned how to do restraints, how to hold people down. And I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. I did not want to go do this, and I don't know why. But anyway, I was doing the job. Went through the training, and I learned how to restrain people and learned all the other stuff. And afterwards, I went up to the guy who was doing the training. His name was Jim. Jim was an interesting character. He had long hair down to like here and a beard to match it. And he was crazy looking, and he'd wear these tie-dyed pants and tie-dyed shirts, almost like a clown-looking guy. Very strange, but really brilliant guy. So I went up to him and I said, Jim, I've been through training. This is all real good stuff. What do I do when I got a kid up in my face yelling at me, screaming at me? What do I do? Because I know what he throws a punch at me. I know what to do. I wrestle him to the ground. We do that thing. He looks at me and he says, Nate, I want you to reach your arm out. Rip his heart out of his chest. Show it to him. Show him his heart. I said, Jim, great story. I love it. Rip the heart. I don't know what that means. I have no idea what you're talking about. And he just smiled in this psychotic look. He said, Nate, you'll figure it out. I like to think that I did. What he was referencing in that is that when we're able to show someone who they are, we're able to sit in that process, that vulnerability, it's disarming. And what he was getting at was this violent teen, this angry kid, that behind that was a broken heart, a broken and bruised, fearful child. Show them that. Show them their brokenness. And that's disarming. It's a beautiful work. And my time I spent there, I had a number of experiences where we were able to have those exchanges, that kind of human interaction. Very beautiful. And so much of that deep learning to be present with each other is absent from our society. And I really would look to you and those of you who are older to help lead us in that. And we need to learn how to have relationships. And we need you to teach us how to have relationships with each other. In order for me to know someone, I have to inhabit their space, soak in their tone, to be present with them. How exactly is it that we learn to be present with each other? Well, the first thing is we have to be willing to be vulnerable with each other, to be intimate with each other. I think it's safe to say that in our society we're seeing a tremendous epidemic in addiction to pornography. Now, I won't go into that and what that's about, but what I will say is it's indicative of a society that does not know how to be vulnerable with each other. It's people looking for intimacy without vulnerability. And it's just reflective of a people who are completely disconnected from each other. And what does it look like for us to lay our hearts out for each other? To be present to each other? To be exposed with each other? And in the end, I think that's what heals us. Jesus gives a really interesting picture for relationships. And let me just read a piece from the Garden of Gethsemane in Mark 14. They went out to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took Peter, James, and John along with him and began to be deeply distressed and troubled. "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death," he said to them. "Stay here and keep watch." Now, the first point I'll make is he asked for help. Right? Hey, I'm upset. Can you guys stay here with me? All right. Do you like asking people for help? No, we don't do that, do we? Going a little further, he fell to the ground and prayed that if possible, the hour might pass from me. Abba, Father, he said, everything is possible with you. Take this cup from me. Yet not what I will, but what you will. Then he returned to his disciples and found them asleep. Simon, he said to Peter, are you asleep? Could you not keep watch for 1 hour? Watch and wait so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the body is weak. Once more he went away and prayed the same thing. When he came back, he again found them sleeping, because their eyes were heavy. They did not know what to say to him. Returning the third time, he said to them, are you still sleeping and resting? Enough, the hour has come. Look, the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here come my betrayers. 3 times. 3 times. You know what I really like about this picture is that Jesus gives us 3 illustrations of relationship. First thing, he asked for help. And he did it multiple times. Second thing he did is he confronted when they let him down. He called him on it, said something about it. And third thing he did is he was hurt. He was wounded in that exchange. It's a beautiful picture to me. Again, we have this crazy notion that in our society that we don't ask people for help. That's, again, some sort of weakness. I don't think I would want to call Jesus weak, but he asked for help. That's a position of strength. He had needs, and he was strong enough and confident enough in himself to make them be known. This is what I need. Can you guys please stay with me? Okay? So that's the first thing we do. In our relationships, we're honest with our needs. We ask people for help. One of the cool things I have learned as a social worker, social work is a profession working with the poor, and I have all these wonderful students who are going to serve others. Well, one of the things I've noticed is they don't know how to let other people serve them. In fact, they're quite opposed to it in general. See, they find their identity, when I was talking about identity, worth, they find their identity and worth and value by helping other people. Oh, I can't let anyone help them. That would be weak. That would be vulnerable. And then I say, what arrogance. How dare you offer to help someone else when you won't receive it yourself? And those of you who are pastors, you know this. You'll ask, you'll expect people to be vulnerable, to be honest, to be broken before you, but you won't dare do it with anyone else. There's a lack of integrity there, and I don't mean to be critical. It's natural in one sense, and it fits. We learn how to help and serve other people by letting them help and serve us. I'll give you one other reason why I think we should ask for help, is that when you get an opportunity to serve someone, you get in return. Right? When someone asks me for help and I get to help them, I really win in the deal, to be honest. It feels good. I grow. It pulls me out of myself, helps me with my self-centeredness. I am blessed by the exchange. Okay, take that for a moment. If that's true, then when I refuse to ask for help, or I refuse to let people help me, I am potentially robbing them of being blessed. I am robbing them out of an experience that helps grow them, that helps pull them out of their self-centeredness. It's beautiful. So when I ask for help, it's a way for me to die and to be vulnerable, but it's also for me a way to serve other people. It gives them a chance to be helpful, to be useful. So when I call my friend at 2 a.m. and say, life's not working out, can you come over? See, I give him a chance to give. It's a way to bless him. Anyway, so Jesus, he asked for help. That's the first thing. And for some of us, that'll take a long time to do. The second thing he did is he confronted. He called them out. Can't you guys stay up? What is wrong with you? Right? Please, I need you. He did it more than once. Multiple occasions. Most people in our society are terrified of confrontation. And usually for good reason. Because it hurts. It's ugly. It's uncomfortable. And we like to avoid anything that's painful. I would venture to say that confrontation is how we develop our most intimate relationships. Think about the 5 people who you are closest to in your life. Chances are those people have seen you yell, they've seen you cry, they've seen you exposed. They know the worst of you. It's kind of like in grade school. My daughter's in 6th grade, and she broke her wrist yesterday, 2 days ago. And so we got talking about broken bones, and then she asked me about if I'd ever broken any bones, and then I got talking about getting into fights in junior high or grade school. And I said, the cool thing about a fight in grade school is the next day you're best friends, right? And you know this, like you have it out, and then you're great friends afterwards. And what I think happens is you just saw me at my bottom, and I saw you, and we were exposed, and now we can kind of come together. And that's confrontation, essentially. Your marriage, right, is hopefully the most significant, close relationship you'll ever be in. It's also a relationship you do a lot of conflict. And somehow you find a way to work it out, to make it happen. I would venture to say the conflict then is how we grow in relationships. We let people know when they let us down. It isn't that we go and just tear people up, but Jesus gives us a very nice picture of that. You just let them know, guys, I needed you right now. I teach a class on group development and one of the group theories and different things like that. But one of the models we use is called the Tuckman model. And it's the Tuckman model of the way groups grow, essentially. Here's how it works. Forming, storming, norming, performing, adjourning. It's the ormings. It's kind of silly. And the basic idea is you start a group and you form, you get together, and everybody's excited, everything's great, nobody really knows what they're doing, and then you get into a fight. The storm comes, and then you work it out, and then you create norms, and everybody figures out what their roles are. And once norms are established, then they can perform. Okay? That's group stuff. Don't worry about that. Here's what I take from that, is this notion that conflict in group development, group theorists would say, is absolutely essential in order for a group to perform at its high capacity. And I think that probably fits in relationships. That it's only out of that kind of fire that we're able to perform and really, really grow in relationship with each other. Okay, so Jesus asked for help. He confronted, and he was let down. He was hurt by it. Relationships are the most significant thing we'll do on earth, I think. Relationships with God, relationship with each other, relationship with ourselves. But we're going to get hurt. But that's no reason not to continue, huh? No reason not to continue at all. Frederick Buechner, one of my favorite quotes, no, it's not a quote, it's a story he gave. Someone was interviewing him and they asked him why he doesn't come speak at churches. And he says, they wouldn't like to hear what I have to say. Okay. And the interviewer says, what would you say? I think the best thing that could happen in the church is if the pastor was hit by a train tomorrow and died. The people were forced to come together and realize that they need God and they need each other. Isn't that interesting? Amen. Now, this is a pastor's conference. I certainly would not want to imply the best thing that happened for your people would be for you to die. But the idea behind it, so oftentimes in leadership, we get put in positions where people are looking to us to save them, to care for them in ways that are not healthy. And we rise to the occasion, oftentimes because our identities are formed there. There's a need there. And sometimes we get in the way of each other building relationships, get in the way of growth. I need you and I need God. It's been said that Alcoholics Anonymous, referenced as the greatest church movement of the 20th century, the greatest movement of the church in the 20th century. Probably fairly accurate. The beautiful thing is it's happening in the basements of our congregations. And in studying the movement, the 12-step movement, The key characteristics to it, this leaderless movement. The person leading a meeting may be sober 6 months. There's no leader to it. But it's a place where people come together and they share their hearts and they listen to each other. Very, very simple. And it brings transformation. And the basic premise of I need God and I need you is woven into that. All right, so I'm back to this picture, relationships. And this idea of the Father. Father Terry Hedrick was a very dear mentor of mine down in Wichita. And I saw him camping in Colorado in this ramshackle little tent thing. RV type tent thing. And I go in there and it's dark and he's got this picture sitting there. And he says, Nate, I know what it's like to be the prodigal. I know what it's like to be the big brother. These days I'm learning what it's like to be the Father. The extender of grace. The one who waits by the fence for others to come home. The one who brings grace to others. Grace in relationships. There's a number of different ways that we can grow and learn in our way of extending grace to other people. I'll tell you a story. I've been kind of into the Desert Fathers this last year. You guys read Desert Fathers and Mothers? 14th century or 4th century Egypt. And essentially what you have is these men and women going out in the desert to find God. Kind of odd. Now they were in good company. Moses went into the desert, John the Baptist, Jesus. It was, in their frame of reference of what to do. But they go out in the desert, and then we have these weird sayings and stories that came from them, and some of them are very, very odd. But one I'll share with you that I think fits very well with this, and it's the story of Abba Antonius. Abba Antonius had a New Testament. He had an Old and New Testament. Now, it's the 4th century. If you had a book, it's because someone hand wrote it. They're very expensive. And these monks, they lived in little caves. They had nothing. They'd eat a loaf of bread a day, or piece of bread a day or something. So there's Abba Antonius with his book. Well, a monk comes to visit him and stays with him. In the middle of the night, the monk notices the book, the Old and New Testament, beautiful book. He steals the book. Okay, goes into the town to a bookseller to sell the book. Bookseller says, it's a very nice book. I'd like to buy it. Let me first research it, find out how much it's worth. And the bookseller takes it to the only person he knows who knows about fine books, Abba Antonius. Takes the book to Abba Antonius, and Abba Antonius says it's a very fine book. It's worth, as the translation says, 20 pence. It says it's worth at least 20 pence. It's a fine book. You should buy it. Bookseller goes back to the monk. He says, I'd like to buy the book. I took it, showed it to Abba Antonius. He said it's worth 20 pence. I'd like to give you 20 pence for it. The monk, shocked. You took this to Abba Antonius? Did he say anything else? I said, it was a fine book. You should buy it. The monk takes the book, says the book's not for sale, runs out the door. Runs straight to the cave of Abba Antonius, falls on his knees and begs forgiveness. Abba, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Abba Antonius says, get up, brother. It's a gift. Go in peace. And as the story goes, the monk spent the rest of his days living with Abba Antonius. It's a beautiful story. It's the same story we find in Les Mis. Jean Valjean. Grace was extended. Here's why I love these stories of grace. It's the prodigal son story played over again. Grace changes people's lives. It's transformative. So for this monk, he stole the book, he brings it back, and then he spends the rest of his days living with him. The son. He learns and he knows. And then he's able to stay. He doesn't want to leave. He wants to stay. And so for us to become extenders of grace, that in our relationships, we ask for help, we confront, We get hurt. We show up. We're present for other people in their suffering and in their pain. And we extend love and grace to them. And it does something. Changes us. And each one of us have those stories of people who've been extenders of grace to us. Probably the most transformative power in the world. So, as leaders, that would be my prayer for you, is to be people who learn and are able to extend grace to others in the messy situations that you find yourselves in. And you start digging around in people's lives, you'll see, as you know, it's very messy. And then we have opportunities to extend grace to others. So, that's what I have for you. Roger, I think we're going to talk.
We are?
That's what I was told, but... There you go. You join us? Did you want to talk?
You want me to?
Well, I had you down on the schedule is that we were going to have a
Well, I
conversation.
think you're on target, really, because I've been learning about relationships and grace all my life. My first pastorate in this town, he's gone now, so I can use his name. I met Joe McCauley, who said I'm the town drunk and I panhandle everybody in town. And to make a long story short, it was my introduction to the world of the alcoholic as a non-alcoholic, although we've all got addictions. And he took me to AA meeting, and I walked down. Out of the meeting was Bill Swift's second floor building down here where we met. I saw "But for the Grace of God" on the wall. And I walked out of that meeting and I said, my God, this is what the church used to be. It was the first experience in a setting like that of learning about that. Then there was faith at work that coming in these experiences along the way. Bruce Larson, who was very much involved in what was called the relational revolution, becoming vulnerable, open, not hiding your brokenness. Well, you can't be hauling your dirty linen all the time. But you're absolutely right when you say our danger is that people find out who I really am, I'm going to be rejected. So we keep our defenses up and we meet each other in the church and we say, well, how are you?
And then we lie to each other.
I'm just great, and they're hurting like hell, really.
Yeah.
You know, really. And so it's almost become a passion with me that in the churches I've served, or tried to serve, that this should become places of inclusiveness and grace and love and understanding, and really what it means to be members of each other. When you suffer, I suffer. When you're honored, I rejoice in that, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah.
How have you learned to grow past that fear of being rejected or being wounded through your years as a pastor?
I want to be honest, some of it's still in me. Yeah. But you take chances, you risk, and suddenly you discover I am accepted. So often when I've shared perhaps a weakness or a need or so on, I've found amazingly response from the other person. That's my story too. And we're on completely different level. We're not up here in some kind of nice weather and how'd the ball game come out, that kind of talk, which just dominates us.
So having those experiences where people kind of catch you there, accept you in that,
Right,
it helps,
right.
helps you keep.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. When did this all start to happen to you, the matter of understanding the grace of the Father? And got to be a real person. You experienced some of that in your own dad?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as with anything, how do we?
It's been a great joy to me that you and your father would come here and be together. You know, in contacting me, I said, you and your dad can model something, because we don't all know what our family life's like out there. In many cases, they aren't happy places, you know, because they're not a trust level factor. So I think it becomes, well, I see you and your dad laughing together. And I was asking, I'll just say I was asking Nathan if he and his dad wanted to have dinner someplace tomorrow night. And he said, no. Your dad said, Nathan and I want to spend time together. And Nate said, maybe we should go for a walk. And that means several hours maybe. Mm-hmm. And I just rejoice in that, because it models something for all of us in terms of family life.
Sure. Well, and I think that, it's a real joy to me to get to do events with my dad in this time. But, then the book I wrote, they sold out of them.
Well, you really took a risk in writing the book, in a way, because you get to open yourself up and your own experience of being broken, and
Yeah, and I think I talked a little bit about that with my dad, and the two of us hiking together, and just his presence and just kind of showing up was important and significant. And I think when I look just for my own life, is people who've been formative have been people who don't come with great insight, although that's nice, but the people who just show up and they're just there. And then we pass that on, and we learn to show up for other people in the messes of life. And we go to meetings with them.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I'm thankful for example, one of my soulmates is here. That's Bob Froning. We met, almost 70 years ago, I suppose, roughly. And we laugh about the fact we were debate colleagues and all that sort of thing. But his wife, Carol, and my wife passed away within 6 months of each other. But before that ever happened, we were deep. Our relationship was deepening. Mm-hmm. And when you say if you've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people that really are your soulmates in the depths of you can cry with them, laugh with them, share the deepest things of your life, that's a very precious gift. Mm-hmm. And I hope that people here, have that kind of experience. Mm-hmm. Because we tend to want to be, it's amazing because you pointed that out with all the gadgets we've got, all the stuff, I don't have any of that, by the way.
I know.
I finally got a cell phone.
Did you?
I know, and my grandson's trying to teach me how to use it.
Yeah.
But because
Roger, you have a cell phone. Yes, he does. But I tried to call him on that cell phone last night, and your box is full. Nobody can get through to you.
I don't even know.
You push a delete button.
All right. Let's face it. I'm living in the dark ages, and if someone come and help me, I don't even know what my cell phone number is. I've got it written down. And when someone, I've noticed on it that the box is full, and I don't know what to do to unlock it. I'm being serious.
Oh yeah.
What'd she say?
You were just confronted. He confronted you on.
I accept the
You were just confronted by someone who is as bad.
I'm glad you're confronting me.
He never turns his phone on. He never turns it on.
Okay.
He turns it on when he wants to make a call, but you can't ever
fine.
reach it.
Well, I just want to say, this is incidental. Two of our sons are here. One of them got up. 3 people came from Sioux Falls, got up at 4 o'clock this morning. And Randy and I, our oldest son, tugged too hard on the lines on an older son, having to work through some things. But one of the great gifts now, he's in our town, that we were really deep friends at the deepest level. You know, just be able to say that. Would that be true, Randy? And Joel, and our daughter Miriam, who wanted to be here but made a commitment to she's a substitute teacher. And she had a commitment. She's standing by in honor for that, yeah.
It's, I read a piece about a former president, okay? And it was about his biography. And it talks about all the accomplishments and his life, blah, 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 blah. And at the very end was almost as a throwaway sentence. It said, President Blank never had any close personal friends. And it really got me thinking that what is wrong with us that we allow, the leader of the free world? Nobody knows them. And I think, you give us a wonderful example, in your 90s to say, I've had these friends, and my son's a friend, and this, it's a beautiful example.
Just say this, my grandkids have become my teachers. A granddaughter in New York City who's wondered whether she should become a Buddhist or not. She's struggling. She's on off-Broadway theater. A grandson, on the other hand, who's been managing a ranch out in Oregon. And a grandson who just was ordained. He's got this variety. It's just amazing. Well, that's touching what you want to talk about.
What does it look like for you to be someone who extends grace to others through your ministry and your personal life?
It comes back in marvelous ways.
Okay.
Yeah. I walked with a fellow back in Sioux Falls named Mike Holt, whose sister Judy has just gotten out of prison. She came home and saw her mother in a bad Alzheimer's situation. And because she's emotionally unbalanced, choked her mother to death, not knowing what she was doing. I went to her hearing. The judge said, I've got to give you 4 years in prison. She was in our prison up in Pierre, South Dakota. We've got a wonderful, wonderful woman there named Michelle Bradley, who's the American Baptist chaplain there. And I walked with Mike and Judy through this, Mike, her brother. He was at the airport when I left on Tuesday. I was checking in, and he came over, and it was like grace was being returned. He laid his hands on me. He said, let me help you get up to the door, what do you call it when you get on a plane?
The gate.
The gate, yeah. And then he introduced me to the woman that was checking us in, and she said, I can move you up near the front because I said. Then she introduced me to the flight attendants, and I had the most amazing experience with these people. And I have to say, in one sense, I tried to live in grace in being an encourager to Mike and Judy through this whole terrible time. And it comes back multiplied hundreds of times. It goes on over and over again. You found that investing with the kind of people you've been working with, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think there's working in helping professions, whether in ministry or counseling or teaching, whatever, it's hard and you get hurt. But it's also a bit of a conspiracy because we get in the end.
Yeah.
I mean, we get to grow in the... I had an interesting experience with teaching. I had a student once, he came to me and he said, Nate, I think you're the best professor I've ever had. I thought.
He was named, by the way, the Professor of the Year last year at his college where he's been teaching. I think we ought to give him a hand on that. I mean that. You're an expert. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Sure, yeah.
That's a cool story, by the way. Well, okay, so here's this kid. He says, you think you're the best professor? And I kind of, make a joke and say, well, I don't know what I said. But I'm kind of feeling, okay, good, I did the intellectual bit. Because I stayed up late and worked and tried to sound smart. And I said something to him about, I don't know if that's a compliment to me or, reflection on your education. And he said, well, Nate, you just cared about me. You just seemed to take time to get to know me. And I thought, well, that's easy. Come on, man. I want to be acknowledged for my intellectual whatever. But it was just show up. Yeah. It was so easy. And I think, the award that I won last year, I really think that's what's behind it. Is I just spent a lot of time with the kids.
Which is what they long for, what they want. They want a friend.
Yeah, and I think what I think it is there's they're not used to having adults care about them.
That's right. Listen, our grandson, Joel, has a book that a person in youth ministry at Fuller came to lecture at the little seminary we have in Sioux Falls, and Joel went to hear him, and he dropped out of school, out of seminary, spent 2 years as a teacher in California school system, wanting to learn where kids are today. The key word, and the name of the book that he wrote is Hurt, H-U-R-T. They say the key word is abandonment. They say we think they understand us, but they don't. So they're abandoned by their own parents, and so forth, right?
Yeah, no, and I talking with Bud, the campus minister here, and I just, in passing, said, you've been here 20 years, is that? 10. I just said, have you noticed they're getting worse? Or that they're bringing more junk? And our college campuses are full of just really, really wounded, broken people. And you hear the stories, and it's dark. And I think that boils down to it, is that needing adults to just be engaged in their life. Now, and every time I get a chance to have an audience of older people who have some flexibility in their schedule, you're needed and you're wanted. And the beautiful thing is you don't have to come with any great tools.
No.
You just come with you.
Presence. You're being there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Most powerful gift we have to give each other.
Amen.
And the easiest in a way.
Yeah.
But our insecurity thinks we have to fix or give insight or direction, instruction.
Yeah. See, you've got the key to your life. I can't turn that for you.
Sure. Sure.
I can love you in a way where I hope that you'll turn the key yourself.
Yeah.
Which you do. Yeah.
Yeah. Encourage me and guide me and help assist me in that. But ultimately, this is on me.
Yeah.
It's community, isn't it?
Oh man.
That's the body of Christ.
Koinonia. Yeah.
Well, Roger, you give us a wonderful example of how to do life and how to love others well. I'm very thankful for it.
I want to be. We had a meeting of friends of Renovari and in New Mexico at, what's the town we met in?
Outside Albuquerque.
Oh, Albuquerque, yeah.
It was a good time.
And Richard Rohr, a Catholic priest, of what? Franciscan, said a thing that I carried home. And you talked about hurt. He said, God went through the hell, the shame, the brokenness, and the blood of the cross to get to us. We've always said he did so we could get to him. But he did it so he could get to us on our ground because of the tremendous love and the fact that when you talked about the cost of relationship, that's the ultimate cost that's paid. And this is why we can sit here today, or be here today, and talk about relationship with each other, because he's opened the way this way to, so you that way, yeah?
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
And I'll just say another thing. The little group, you see, we were 5 or 6 of us in our group. And I have to say, just the 45 minutes we had together, things were said, you know, that would not be said perhaps openly, but I hope and pray that people are going to really be, you know, get into the guts of what can happen in these groups. Yeah.
Most important part of the day.
Yeah.
I do believe. And they're going to give you a chance to work again. So for the next 30 minutes, we'll break you into your, and this will be, stay with the same small group. And
I
then,
think in one in 1 or 2 cases a little bit too large. If you get 8, 9 people in a group, it gets to be. Then we get to lecturing to talking to each
4
other.
or 5.
It's just 4 or 5 is.
So you might want to break a couple groups up.
Yeah. He's willing to do that. Yeah.
So I've got a couple questions for you to work with. And in my mind, the questions are just to kick things loose. Don't feel like you have to serve